Hello and good evening. My name is Fabio Gigli. I'm the chair of the JRC here at SOAS. It's a great pleasure to welcome you, to have a really extraordinary guest who came all the way from LA for only 2 days in Europe, from the fire, perhaps, to the rain or the wintry cold here. Our guest tonight is Dr. Paula Curtis, historian of medieval Japan at UCLA in Los Angeles. She is a specialist in medieval Japan, as the job title suggests, but she will not talk about this research now, although it is fascinating. It is about, the people who create metal and the kind of mythologies that go together with her profession. But also, she has a very interesting interest in forgery and forged documents and the history thereof. So if you want to know more about this, go and have a look at the Monumenta Nipponica article that she wrote. I think they came out 2 years or 3 years ago.
COVID times, who knows what year it
Oh,
was?
yes.
2021, 2020, not quite sure.
In
Could
the
be
pandemic
anything.
fog, yes.
Yes.
And so if you want to know more about that, do have a look at that. But tonight she will talk about her other hat, perhaps, which is as a very engaged scholar who is a digital humanities person, who is very social media savvy, who looks at how can we take the discipline forward into an online world, how can we make resources accessible, and also with a really important role, service to the profession, looking at who gets hired in this particular Japanese studies field, what appointments are made, and what kind of statistical data can we have about that. She will talk tonight about Japan past and present, and I will now shut up and hand over to you. So thank you very much for coming, and give a big round of applause.
Well, thank you so much for the introduction, and to the SOAS community for being here today. And of course, to both Luca and Fabio and the staff for inviting me and making it possible for me to hop not over just a pond, but the whole continent as well. So as he so kindly said in his introduction, I am working on a project called Japan Past and Present. I am its operations leader. This is a project of the Yanai Initiative for Globalizing Japanese Humanities, and it actually launched almost exactly 1 year ago today, though it was many years in the making. So today I would like to introduce the aspects of Japan Past and Present, or JPP, as a whole, and also reflect with all of you on how digital connectivity can be leveraged most effectively to, as my title suggests, transform a global field. Now, as you can read on our mission statement, JPP is a global information hub and repository that promotes research and teaching in the Japanese humanities across disciplinary, temporal, and geographic borders. JPP aims to provide equitable access to resources for teaching and scholarship in pursuit of a more inclusive and diverse field by creating an infrastructure that fosters more international collaboration and creates opportunities for more voices to be heard in Japan studies. JPP was established through the support of the Yanai Initiative, which is a joint project between UCLA and Waseda University. The Yanai Initiative was established in 2014 through the support of philanthropist Tadashi Yanai, the CEO and founder of Uniqlo. On the Waseda side, the initiative is co-directed by Michael Emmerich of UCLA and Toeda Hirokazu of Waseda. And on the UCLA side, Michael is the director. The Yanai Initiative has hosted numerous cultural and scholarly events, supported various academic projects, scholars and graduate students in Japan studies, and more. And JPP is in keeping with the initiative's goals to make the Japanese humanities more inclusive and equitable on a global scale. To this end, we were thrilled to announce this past October that Mr. Yanai made an additional commitment of $31 million to UCLA's College of Humanities, the bulk of which is dedicated to JPP realizing its goals. And this is the second time that Mr. Yanai has made the largest gift in the history of the division to support the Japanese humanities. Because JPP is part of the Yanai Initiative, which we believe is the Japanese studies organization with perhaps the second largest endowment in the world after Harvard's Reischauer Center, it is something that is here to stay. And we will also have time to grow and to expand our outreach and evolve with changing circumstances. Our website itself launched in March of 2024, and it currently features a number of projects and resources that I will walk through and explain some of shortly. But at its core, JPP is a large-scale endeavor that aims to leverage digital resources to tackle some of the systemic challenges that researchers and educators face in and beyond the field. Of course, naming all of those challenges and their finer points could itself be a presentation. So suffice it to say that JPP's infrastructure and initiatives have been led by considerations of enhancing interdisciplinary and transregional communication, creating a platform that elevates more diverse voices and makes knowledge more accessible to those without the benefit of extensive institutional resources, thinking deeply on how the work that we do can be sustained and replicated, and promoting recognition of different types of scholarship and labor. With each project and program that JPP develops, we consider these interlocking issues and how confronting them in a thoughtful, informed way can facilitate this transformation of the Japanese humanities for the better. And this process begins with JPP's functions and programming. JPP invites partnerships with scholars and institutions around the world to create teaching and research materials, and it serves as a centralized digital hub for scholars to connect, communicate, learn, and locate the latest information in the field. In particular, we hope to raise the visibility of scholars outside of the Anglophone and the Japanese circles, and encourage multilingual exchanges and support faculty and students at underserved and underrepresented institutions. We've already been working with over a dozen international institutions and organizations, with many more, we hope, to come. And I should add that one of the ways that we have endeavored to make our content more accessible to an international audience and international partners is by creating an entirely bilingual infrastructure for the website. And this is professionally translated with lots of input from us, not AI generated, such that, English is not the assumed language of everyone using our site, but rather Japanese is the lingua franca, or Japonica, if you will. The administrative organization, as I mentioned, has Michael Emmerich as our director. We have extensive and indispensable support from our associate director, Elizabeth Lester, who answers all of my questions. And then I am operations leader, and we also have 2 staff members who work as project managers on the Waseda side of our office, giving us support for our Japan-based needs. Our organization is also built around 3 core temporal units, or collaboratives, and each one is led by a project manager who helps facilitate our work. In order to bring in new scholars and bodies of expertise, we chose project managers from 3 different time periods, 3 different disciplines, and each of whom are based in a different continent. And presenting JPP's content within these periodizations is not intended to silo and divide along those lines, but rather to create a framework through which we can leverage those existing communities that they may know best and proactively seek to transcend those barriers, and also to make work on Japan more legible to our colleagues in other fields who may be looking for opportunities for comparative research, or teaching, as it were. So as operations leader, then, I serve as the liaison between our directors, our project managers, our wonderful supporting staff, our collaborators on various projects, and also our advisory board. For our advisory board, we similarly worked very consciously to bring in a diverse body of specialists to work with and help us through JPP's early years of development. And this includes scholars who are based at Mexico, South Korea, Vietnam, small liberal arts colleges, libraries, digital studies, Ainu studies, queer studies, and more. And infrastructurally, these are great starting points. But one of the most important things that we recognize as we develop the site is that more voices matter, and those voices are critical for us to create sustainable, accessible resources. So for the development of major digital resources and some of our projects, we hold open calls to create teams that can take the time to thoroughly consider how some projects should be or could be developed in order to create the best and most accessible and inclusive content that we possibly can. It would be one thing if a team of 3 project managers made all the decisions for JPP, but we recognize that that's not the best way forward and that this kind of diverse input really matters. So in addition to a recently launched library services team with information specialists, we also frequently form these 2 to 4 month content development teams who collaborate internationally over Zoom on proposals that evaluate our existing resources out in the world of all kinds, consider the benefits and the pitfalls and of specific functionality or content for something, how these resources can serve different audiences, and much more. And some of these teams are brought on specifically for things like multilingual data acquisition to account for non-Anglophone, non-Japanese content. We really realize in the creation of things that we have to put the idea first. And so the input of global audiences is the only way to successfully serve global audiences. We hope to launch several of the projects that are listed here within the next year, but the sheer diversity of participants in terms of profession, background, geography, institutional affiliation, all of this has been an incredible asset and introduced us to colleagues as far-flung as Russia to Costa Rica and Colombia to New Zealand. So it's really been an incredible learning experience for us along the way as well. Being here at SOAS, of course, I would be remiss if I did not mention that your very own Luca here served on a concept development team for our Digital Humanities Japan project, which we also hope to make significant progress on this year based on their excellent proposal. Our most recently launched concept development team is for the Japanese paper film database project. We just brought on a team of 5 to come up with the best possible solutions for creating a video and image forward database for these paper film works that have been digitized as a part of the Japanese paper film project by Eric Fadden at Bucknell University, and the Yanai Initiative. On the Yanai Initiative side, we are also collaborating with Eric for a global film tour of some of these paper films that we do not have a final schedule for me to share with you, but it is coming down the pipeline. So establishing JPP as a centralized digital hub is not just for convenience, but to offer new and exciting ways for communities to come together and to gain more visibility. If I were to ask someone here, what is the latest research by Japan scholars in Malaysia? Or who could I reach out to specifically in Central Europe to learn about what's going on in that field in Japan studies there, in literature or something to that effect? Most of us would come up blank unless we had that one person maybe that we knew. So one way that we are working to bring specialists together is the creation of Japan Scholar Search. This is a free, user-driven, searchable directory of Japan scholars that is intended to allow us to connect to each other more easily across the globe without getting 10,000 emails from LinkedIn or academia.edu, some of our favorite things to get 4 times a day, but a way to make experts more easily findable. And experts can create their own profiles with both an English and a Japanese version. You can customize each side on our English or Japanese side of the website. And you can identify yourself by a variety of searchable keywords and specializations. There's not only an open keyword search, but also filters to find specific specialists. So whether you want to know who is in what region, maybe if you're planning a local conference, or who operates in what research language, who also works in Arabic or Tagalog, there will always be ways here to locate your future connections. Users are entirely in control of their own profiles, their links to their social media or their other research profiles. They can upload information about themselves and their publications, their teaching expertise, and even identify what kinds of opportunities they want to be contacted for. And one of the features that you see here is one that most excites us, which is that there's also an internal messaging system that routes directly to your email without sharing your email. So anyone who has tried to find the email address of a scholar in Japan that is somewhere, somehow out in the universe, but definitely not on their institutional website, we take that into account because we know that different countries and institutions have different ideas about digital privacy. And sometimes it seems like word of mouth is the only way to find someone's email address. So we created a secure way to send a message to someone, even if their email is not publicly available. If they have created a JSS profile, then they can be messaged directly and choose whether or not they are going to be engaging with you. We hope that this provides an elegant solution to privacy concerns that really is a Japanese studies wide issue, and also connect more specialists around the world, including through those filters that say, please contact me for, right? So we've also developed a community landing page for events, where it's possible for anyone to submit an event in any language. Although there are rich and important events being offered around the world, oftentimes we find ourselves limited in our knowledge about them simply because we're not on this mailing list or that one, and there's only so many emails we can receive and look at and retain our sanity. So the JPP events page can also be browsed by date, but it also provides, similar to JSS, lots of filters, such as event types, like including workshops or films or cultural events, symposia, etc. You can also look at it by format. So if you are looking to go to a certain place and see something in person, or if you want to know what are the hybrid or virtual options out there in the world right now. You can also look by time period if you just want to find all the pre-modern content like I do, language, or even location. And when it is uploaded to JPP, every event gets its own detail page and its own dedicated URL, which can include things like flyers and more information. This is something that's really critical if an institution does not have a robust infrastructure for advertising, or if there's that one person in the admin office who is standing between you and your public sharing of your event. And with global participation in mind, we have also built in a time zone converter and a calendar ad feature so that you know exactly when an event is happening, no matter where it is in the world. Our publications page also shares this goal of raising visibility of scholars and scholarship. More often than not, we have no idea what the latest publications are or what kind of research is being produced by our colleagues in other languages. And to help resolve this issue, we register press and journal editors directly in our password-protected portal, where they can maintain their own free accounts. And this account allows them to go in at any time at their convenience and upload or edit their latest publications. So even if something, say, has a publication date that changes or a cover image changes or wasn't available and then was, publishers can manage all of that themselves without having to email me, which is very convenient and very much a relief. So much the same as the JSS and events pages, users can then filter everything that they see and find this kind of one-stop shopping for the latest around the world. They can search by edited volumes or catalogs or things in translation, by time periods, subject, language, etc. So if you want to know what has come out in German in recent years, all you need to do is navigate to them. And the same could be said if you wish to look specifically for pre-modern literature or gender studies. At present, we currently have, I want to say, about maybe 85 presses and journals that can be found on the publisher's page, along with some custom filters. And we have put them all here in one spot so that you can, in fact, browse by the publisher itself. And this will also allow kind of smaller boutique presses that maybe don't have large advertising budgets or really robust web presence to be able to share platforms with some of these larger presses that we might think of. And being more readily visible, someone can navigate to a specific press by a filter for what they've uploaded here and say, oh, I wonder if Amsterdam University Press is a good fit for my research. And they can see all the latest publications starting in 2020, because we don't want anyone to feel extremely pressured to upload an entire backlog of books. But it's one way to kind of browse and search and find where you might fit in what this press has been putting out recently. Although in the time that we have today, I can't go into detail about every project that JPP has in process. I briefly tried with Luca a few minutes ago and kind of failed to remember everything that we were doing. But I want to highlight some current and future activities that give you a sense of how we work in partnership with specialists and institutions around the world. And if there are projects that you would like to hear more about, because you'll see a list of them, I might not talk about them all, I welcome you to ask more questions in the Q&A, and we could also noodle around the website if the internet plays nicely with me. So prior to JPP's launch, with our project managers, we worked to kind of arrange some ad hoc projects, a handful of initial features and partnerships, some of which are already live, and others which are soon to go up, and some that are longer term projects, because it would be unfortunate if we had an empty website when we launched. So some of these have been in the works and some are well on their way. One example is our Disability Studies in Japan project. This was a project developed by 5 scholars based in Japan, the US, and France to host a wonderful batch of teaching and research materials on disability studies, specifically in honor of the activism and scholarship of the late Dr. Mark Bookman, with a focus on teaching materials to assist scholars in including this important area of study in their broader courses, whether it's on disability or on Japanese culture and society more broadly. And this is actually a project that we consider ongoing. Obviously, one team cannot cover the breadth of something as important and enormous as disability studies. So we do welcome future applications from teams who might wish to expand this project and make it more comprehensive and diversify the content therein, which already includes vocabulary lists, things like many teaching plans, some lesson plans, reading lists, annotated media lists in case you are looking for multimedia additions to your syllabi, and much more. One of our first completed projects was smaller scale in its team, but was highly productive. The Hidden Christian World Heritage in the Goto project features a series of oral interview excerpts from Hidden Christian descendants. And it was led by the Australia-based Gwen McLilland and was a collaboration with local residents in the Goto Islands, Sakatani-san and Otani-san, who in the process of working with us, assisted with the editing and the transcription process, as well as collaborating on the translation of English language content for the site into Japanese. This is the first of our projects, actually, that prepared all of its content to be fully bilingual, not just our website infrastructure. Teams have the option of deciding if they have the time and the funds to do that. And this team said it was very important to them to be able to provide both languages for all their content. So not only the background content is prepared also in Japanese, but the original interview transcripts are also included, as well as all of the lesson plans. And each of the lesson plans for this project is tied to the specific interview excerpt that is provided. So it's a really wonderful ready-made teaching resource where you can send your students there, tell them to listen to the interviews, and then have the lesson plan already prepared to work with them on it. Nearing its completion is the Blood, Tears, and Samurai Love project, which focuses on a rare and possibly unique early 18th century Jitsurokubon manuscript, which is being called by the people working on it tentatively Shuro Tsuya Monogatari, or how do we, an all-night tale of boys' love. This is a story recounting a real-life event, probably slightly fictionalized, or made more literary, I suppose. I can hear the literature specialist going and wanting me to describe this more thoroughly, but this is a manuscript that describes the rather robust love life and tragic end of a young samurai boy in northern Japan. And this project emerged actually from a Kuzushiji reading group that was originally based at Yale, which owns this manuscript. And it really grew over the years to become an international collaboration across Japan, Europe, and the US, as the reading team, which had been doing this for many, many years, decided that they were going to come together and think about what they were going to do with the manuscript and how they could make it accessible, make their translation available, and have a sustainable way to present it to the broader world. So they produced the transcriptions and the translation of the text, and the JPP web development team created a custom IIIF viewer, seen here, which could display the text and its extensively researched background and place all of these things into an easy to use digital viewer where you can navigate between all of the different incarnations of the text, both the original text, the English, and the modern Japanese translation as well. The project as a whole features lots of visual essays, maps, charts of the character relationships, the historical background research into the people in the manuscript who we actually know were real people, as well as reading lists that can take readers to additional content on, for example, queer relationships, male-male relationships in pre-modern and early modern Japan. So in addition to receiving co-sponsorship in support from Yale and Leiden and some Dutch government grants, this project has really been a wonderful way to collaborate, and we've also managed to collaborate with some of the archives in Yonezawa that hold relevant holdings for the project. We are working right now on, we sponsored the digitization of an Edo period map that we are going to be hosting on the UCLA Library Digital Collections. And because the library actually did not have the funds to get it digitized, this was a way that we could give back to them and also make the map available digitally for anyone to view and enjoy. So similar to the Blood Tears and Samurai Love project, our Tabi Hikitsuke reading group has been meeting bi-weekly for probably over a year now, which is kind of scary to say when you consider that's how some of my Sundays are being used. This is a group that is led by Lee Butler, an independent scholar who is actually currently in the review process and editing process of a book on the writer of this diary, Kujo Masamoto. And, you know, sometimes you just really want to read with people and share the thing you love. And so Lee had already told us, I would really like to read this diary with someone. And we were very enthusiastic, Nadia Kanagawa and I, as pre-modernists, to say, yes, let's read this, let's do a thing. And of course, it's one thing to read and train on a diary and another to say, now everybody else has to enjoy this thing that we love. And so as a part of making the translations of this important early 16th century diary accessible, we are working with participants to come up with a critical mass of these translations. And hopefully soon-ish, maybe in the next several months, we will be able to feature them on the JPP website. And what's really wonderful about this project, aside from people are actually willing to see us for 2 hours every other week, is that this range of specialists who have taken part of this is really broad. It's a 16th century diary, but the people joining us are Heian poetry specialists and Edo literature or book enthusiasts, people who work in history, people who work in drama, retired scholars, graduate students, one really intrepid undergraduate who just loves language. And so it's really been a wonderful way to bring a community together and to work our way through what is really one person's diary of their innermost thoughts, as well as the workings of where he lives in Izumi province. So for making this translation and its content readily available to the community at large, right now, our web development team for JPP is developing an infrastructure to host this diary and other future diaries on the website. The GIF you see here is actually a mock-up of our calendar layout, which, as you may have guessed from our fun icons, is of course based on the lunar cycle, as everything was in this time. And we plan for this diary and the infrastructure that is being created to access it to be a model for future iterations of other diaries, other pre-modern diaries, and other projects that people may want to use to simultaneously showcase the original text, a kundoku transcription, English language translation, and all of the content that is being prepared for this will also have downloadable options. So you can literally click download as PDF and hold on to this, use it in a classroom, or just enjoy it offline or online. And this is really one example of what's going to be possible as we continue to develop JPP and to take advantage of the expertise of our incredible web development team that we love so much and we can't stop saying thank you to enough. But really, it raises one of the important questions about, there are many of these kind of small projects and small workshops that produce really important work on what others might consider niche, but very important materials, whether it's historical or literary or artistic. And the question of where do you house that? And where does that live in a sustainable way for future people to use is really important. And especially we're thinking about this in light of, for example, lots of wonderful projects that get Kaken grants, right, in Japan. And then there's a database that's kind of obscure that lives on a website for a little while and then maybe disappears forever. And so JPP is thinking a lot about what it means to make these projects accessible and sustainable and hopefully not beholden to anyone else's one website, but here with a project that is going to grow and being supported by this endowment to stay. I should add that not only are products of these various projects available through each individual project page, but we also have other ways to access them within the website itself, depending on what you are seeking. So our teaching aids section, for example, features reading lists and lesson plans, and soon syllabi and videos for our future projects. And all of these materials can also be accessed thematically through what kind of content you're looking for on this page, and can be downloaded with time-stamped PDFs in case any content ever gets, for example, updated. So this area of the site will continue to grow. Right now, it mostly features the reading lists that have been initially donated to us, as well as the lesson plans for early projects. But we have many things coming down the pipeline that will continue to diversify what we can offer. Now, a critical part of our goal of expanding our offerings is the project funding that is available through JPP. We currently are planning, as we figure out what's going to best work for offering these kinds of opportunities, to hold spring and fall cycles for project funding. And what time periods or themes or content we're looking for will vary each cycle and be specified each cycle to make sure that we maintain a good balance of the kind of content that is under development with us. Through our project funding, JPP offers up to $10,000 to teams of up to about 5 people, unless you have additional co-sponsorship, to create these kinds of open access content and projects that will go up on the JPP website. Each project team is given about 4 months to work specifically on what they are developing for us, though with good progress, there is a possibility of extension. We've already funded 6 such projects seen here, with at least 2 or 3 that we expect to launch in the next couple of months. And they range in topic from historical accounts of Japanese women in Southeast Asia in the 17th century, to educational interviews with participants in global kawaii subcultures, to the development of inclusive LGBTQIA+ Japanese language instruction materials and TEI tagged data sets of Soseki's literary corpus. So we have a lot going on. And our upcoming deadline is actually in just a couple of weeks. But one of the most important parts of our project funding is that we prioritize teams that embody our goals of diversity and equity. And we promote collaboration among specialists of different backgrounds, institutions, academic positions, genders, disciplines, and more. And to date, the 6 teams, if we're just talking about the 6 teams that we funded in the last year, they represent about 20 institutions from 10 different countries. And these opportunities are something that we want to be an impetus for people to reach out to more and different types of colleagues in other areas, other disciplines who have common interests, and find a way to get outside their usual circles and embrace this more global body of scholarship and education. And as you can see, our next deadline is on March 1st, but this will be for our spring 2025 cycle. And in pursuit of these goals, JPP will also be holding an international symposium in May at Waseda University on the theme of Japan Past and Present, Reimagining a Global Field. This event invited scholars around the world to apply as panels of 3 to speak on the past, present, and future of Japan studies in a specific discipline or a specific regional area, and use this as a basis for mutual understanding and learning about the state of the field. We received for this event a truly overwhelming number of applications, and we had to make some very difficult decisions for our teams. But our final lineup represents 23 different institutions from 13 different countries, ranging from Brazil and Malaysia to Singapore and the UK. And these presentations are intended to help a global audience of colleagues really understand the different contexts within which our scholarship and education in the Japanese humanities is being undertaken around the world, and start those discussions about differences and similarities and what can be achieved through mutual support. So again, going back to kind of our core ideas, for example, for the concept development teams, it needs to start with understanding the different kind of global perspectives on the field as a whole to see where the field then is moving forward or has been. Finally, I wanted to quickly point to our databases currently under development. This year, we actually launched our external grants database, the content of which is still a work in process. But this is something that allows users to search a highly filterable interface for locating funding opportunities relevant to Japan studies, and to a certain extent, East Asian studies more broadly, although we also have a kind of general marker if there's a specific scholarship or fellowship opportunity that would still be accessible to people in the field. The multilingual content of this tool in particular is something that we are still growing, in part because, what is the go-to financial support for people in different areas can be very difficult to target without actually being in that area and living through that PhD or that MA or undergraduate experience, or being a professor in that area. But in addition to the external grants database, we did have 2 concept development teams that have supported the creation of 2 upcoming databases, which you may have seen listed on our concept development team slide, which is a multilingual conferences database. So people who are seeking to present at different conferences around the world, or find out where they can present in certain languages or on certain topics, will be able to find that. And also a journals database, which will be historical, not just contemporary active journals. And we had just truly global, multilingual, utterly impressive concept development teams that helped us with the acquisition of data for those particular databases. And we hope very soon the conference database will be up and the journal database will follow. Another major digital resource that we hope to make significant progress on this year is probably one of the biggest we might host, which is why it's one of the first that we worked on and is still in process. This will be the Japan in Translation database. It's very ambitious. It aims to be a centralized tool for locating primary sources in translation, including not just English and Japanese, but any translated language. So if you want to know if Yoshimoto banana is in Dutch, or if there's a French version of the Kamakura period law codes, or just how many languages is the tale of Genji in, we'd like to know that too. And so the aim will be comprehensiveness, multidisciplinarity, and increasing the visibility of otherwise hard to locate resources. As I said, this was actually one of the first teams that we put together because it is one of the projects we are most enthusiastic about. And our concept development team kind of ruined us for all the other concept development teams in some ways, because we constantly refer to the extremely comprehensive proposal they created, which was about 55 pages long. And we still have to pare down before we speak with our web development team and set them to work on this project. And everyone who was on the team, which included people of many different disciplines and backgrounds and languages, people who are, scholars of literature, scholars of film, who are librarians and information specialists, they've all have said, can we come back for data acquisition? So we're excited that they're excited, and we're hoping to perhaps link this to the Japan Scholar Search function as well, because nothing says database like gamifying submission to it. So hopefully this will come sooner rather than later, but it is one of the more exciting things coming down the pipeline. As if all of this wasn't enough, because I know you're so excited about how many things I've listed here, there is going to be more. But some things are in the very preliminary stages of planning, and I have to let you go sometime. So suffice it to say that Japan Past and Present has a vision for the future of Japanese humanities that is bigger than any one place or any one language or any one discipline or time period. And the globalizing goal of the Yanai Initiative for Globalizing Japanese Humanities is the guiding principle for us as we grow. And though we know that radically transforming the field, which is our favorite thing to say all the time, is not something that can happen overnight or maybe even in the next few years, our mission is to create a more sustainable and equitable way for scholars and students of Japan to cross and push boundaries. With so many institutions, especially in our particular moment, currently struggling to maintain robust area studies programming, a community-driven community building initiative like JPP is, we feel, more urgent now than ever. And we hope that it can be a catalyst for positive change that embraces and encourages the creativity and diversity that is already present in our global field. With that, I will stop and invite questions or comments. I have not been keeping track of the time, as I promised myself, but please do join us on social media, on Japan Scholar Search. If you do join JSS immediately, it might take a moment for me to approve your application because I'll be on a plane tomorrow. So please bear with me. But you can also sign up for our news, so you get periodic announcements about what we have out. And if you manage to make it across the pond to AAS this year in Columbus, you can always come by our booth for some swag and to chat with us about potential future collaborations and projects. Or just to chat and say hi. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for a very fascinating presentation. It all looks so out there, so professional and carefully crafted. I'll open to the floor in a second, but I wanted to ask you first about something we touched upon a little bit when we were talking earlier, and that of course is the elephant in the room, the use of AI, because it seems that the presentation is wonderful, and the translation and all of that. There's something artisanal about it that is so loving and so detailed, and it's really a work of love in the end. So how do you see the influx of AI into? Is this something? Do you have a policy on that?
You mean for content production, or do you mean for kind of the building of the framework of the site, or workflow, or
translation, even, you know, the actual intellectual work that goes into it, and that I think we all have a very critical approach to, but once you start using it, you know, there is a moment of reckoning when you realize I'll never be as quick as this bloody thing here. So what?
I mean, that is a really good question, because there are, I'm thinking about it more from the perspective of building the site into something bilingual, because there is always something lost when you're using automated translation. And we don't have a policy for or against AI for content that is being created for us, but as far as creating the infrastructure for the JPP website, we've thought about this extensively, because we want this to be something where, you know, it's not choppy, weird, automated language, and that actually the speed is one of the issues, right? Because everything that we put out goes through a several part process, one of which is we have a really talented interpreter and translator who works with us for the initial draft into Japanese. She is a native Japanese person who has worked for a long time in America, and she produces the first translation, after which we then have somebody in Japan who is professionally an editor for academic content.
Right.
And so then everything goes to her and she reviews it. And so after that, it comes back to us and we have queries for her about what she understood our content to look like and we understood it to look like. And kind of that meeting of languages and backgrounds is really essential, because that guides what kind of content we end up with on the website to make sure that it's accessible to audiences whose native or primary languages are both English and Japanese. So there is absolutely a speed question where everything we do takes a little bit longer, but it also means that it is the most accessible and cleanest content that we can produce that is the most understandable to the most people.
Right.
So as far as what we prepare for the site, we don't use AI. It's not helpful for us to kind of reach that end goal, because there is a lot that is cultural, that is understood, and also different interpretations of people who have maybe spent more time in the US versus more time in Japan. So there's a really great difference in types of talent that each of our translators and editors bring to the table with us. And for content, we have not had that particular conversation with anyone yet, because a lot of the intellectual labor, I feel like people are ready to do it. We haven't had someone yet say, I have AI translated all the content I've created for your website. And we're like, ooh, great, because we haven't encountered it yet. And there is a lot of intellectual work that goes into even refining something that might have been produced by AI.
Right.
And so we take the time to make sure that our content makes sense and is really meaningful in that sense. Maybe that's not a total answer on that.
That makes perfect sense. Right, I have lots of other questions, but I'll open to the floor. Also, if you're joining us online, and I see there are already some questions, yes, please keep feeding your questions into Q&A function. Anyone in the room? Don't be shy. Yes, please.
I signed up for newsletter.
Yay.
But you said there's another way of registering.
Well, there are several ways to keep updated with us. We have accounts on Twitter, Blue Sky, and Facebook, and the newsletter, is it a letter or a subscription? We send out regular updates when new content or new opportunities go live. When people are signing up for Japan Scholar Search in particular to create a profile, we have kind of a two-step process where you register, and we have an option that you can either register with a university or academic address, and then it goes through like a pending approval, because I look at it and make sure that address is real. And if you don't have an institutional affiliation, which we realize many independent scholars do not, there is also a verification document process, which takes a little bit longer, but it also enables us to be more inclusive, because we understand that not everybody is employed at an academic institution. So my kind of offhand joke was that if you're signing up for JSS tonight, I'm probably going to be sleeping, and you're going to be like, why can't I log in yet? And it's because I haven't gone in and approved all the new people yet.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Bill. Obviously, thank you for bringing us this kind of part. So what you just spoke about AI and translation, reminds me of similar issues I asked you about. Dr. Paula Curtis, he was head of the National Council for London. And your presentation at some point I saw it mentioned anxiety for the promotion of science. So my question is, how much do you know about translation of scientific material? Before I went to SOAS, I about in my lecture, I think actually there was people in the translation of scientific.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I do not know much about what is going on in the scientific side of translation. Our focus is on the humanities. There is kind of a scope at which we have to make sure that what we're working on is manageable, and the humanities is also the focus of the Yanai Initiative. But one of the things that we're really enthusiastic about, and we're still having conversations about, is how can we promote skills in translation and promote the creation of networks in translation of people who are working on certain types of materials. The Yanai Initiative already sponsors a couple of different translation workshops. I believe one of them, or maybe both of them, is focused on literature at the moment. But we are thinking about, if we are to pursue something like translation subvention funding in the future, what does that look like for helping to contribute to a pipeline of training and competent people who have mentorship from people who are already working in those fields? So while we don't particularly work on or in connection with translation for scientific materials right now, the larger question of the translation community is something that we're definitely thinking about for the future. My email probably, or if you are interested in sort of the Yanai Initiative's larger goals, if you go to the Yanai Initiative website, which I should be able to rattle off the top of my head, but if you Google it, you will find it. You can probably reach out to the Yanai Initiative directly because they are more involved in the direct facilitation of things like translation workshops and mentorship. So they might have more information for you than perhaps I do in the capacity of JPP. There is a question in the chat, and I secretly think it's like Simon in disguise. But somebody had said that it seems to me in the list of humanities fields mentioned on JPP, archaeology seems to be missing. Is that actually the case, and is there a reason? No, we would love people to submit projects related to archaeology. This is something, the current round of project funding says that we are especially encouraging pre-modern related projects. And we are very interested in interdisciplinary projects that may incorporate, not just be about archaeology or archaeology in its many, many forms. And we would love to receive more on archaeology and help promote those communities, because we also know those are much smaller and more niche compared to even some of the things that I enjoy in history.
Thank you. Yes, Lipo and then one.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. I've been following the campus and present for a while, but it was really good to have a very broad overview today and understand everything that is going on. I have just a small technical question. When you show the partnerships with the publishers, listing what has been published in the field, if you, for example, if one has published with a press that is not there, can the person, the author, tell you, okay, I have written this thing and it's out, but you need to wait for the publisher?
It's a very good question, and we have definitely had it before. My first suggestion is to contact the publisher and to tell them, please sign up for this. Because part of the reason why we are very enthusiastic to have publishers do this and be in control of their own materials is because otherwise we become a third party kind of interloper, and somebody says, well, this is published and it's not up there yet. And it's like, well, I am a staff of one presently. And the fact that we have 85 publishers and it's nowhere near representing the breadth of stuff that's out there, that would mean, I would be maybe uploading 12 things by this publisher and 60 things by that publisher. And it's not, one, feasible, but also they're the people who know your work best. And if something changes, For example, the top tier of our publishers page is forthcoming books. So sometimes we will have kind of a blank placeholder image because the press is really enthusiastic about showing what's coming, even if the book cover is not up yet. But once it is available, they have control over that entry. So they can go in and make any changes, whether a translator changes, a book image changes, and they don't have to wait for any of us to go in and do that. And so that's really one of the benefits of getting the publishers on board. And they can upload anytime they want. We've also had like publishers just say, great, my intern's gonna do this. And we're like, wonderful, make an intern do this. It's actually a very easy form to fill out just the basic information of the book. So I would say, please talk to the publisher. And our list of publishers page is, for presses that actually registered with us. So the problem then, if we uploaded something on our own, would be that there would be no filter for it, and it would be less discoverable as well. And so that's why we encourage people to reach out and tell them like, hey, wouldn't it be great if you gave more visibility to all these people? So sometimes when I see people's books pop up on mailing lists, I mail them and I'm like, hey, we haven't seen your publisher, or didn't know that publisher in France existed. Please ask them if they're interested in uploading their stuff. And we really hope that more scholars will reach out and help us with the excellent relationships they already have with their press. And we would love to have more people sign up with us.
Yes, Monica, please.
Thanks very much for a very engaging presentation. So for a while and kind of for the newsletter. And you've made use of reading this. You showed a page with publishers and journals, and I was happy to see that there was unlisted that I'm the editor-in-chief of. And I'm wondering whether is there a chance via JPP to have a call for papers?
We don't currently have a kind of mailing list-esque kind of way to promote other people's calls for paper right now. Our major goal with things like our mailing list and our social media is to promote our opportunities. I mean, there are many mailing lists already, and that's part of the reason why, yeah. But once it's published, absolutely let us promote it. And we will be doing more outreach via our social media once we have more staff on hand to promote, some of the latest publications that go up on the page and say, hey, have you seen the 12 new things that, Columbia University Press put up, and do more cross promotion that way. We are just sadly not at that stage quite yet. There's a question in the chat. Jenny says that she had the pleasure of working with Dr. Mark Bookman before his passing and wondered how to find out about further work on the Disability in Japan project, or would that be a new application for a project? That's a great question. And this was one of the projects where we realized there's absolutely tons more work to do. So I believe it may be found in the FAQ part of our project funding that if you wish to contribute to an existing project, you can submit an application to do so and specify that you've put together a proposal for a second disability studies team, for example. If the project is led by a specific person and is more or less considered a contained project, that application, I would say email us and ask about this, or contact the PI for that project, because we would not want to be adding to someone's intellectual labor that they consider complete as a unit on the site. And we would want to make sure that that is something the original project leader would be okay with. But for something like our disability studies project, absolutely, we are open to receiving applications to further that content.
There's a follow-up, I think.
Are there any ongoing projects which are looking at the accessibility of the website for people who are blind or have vision impairments, as well as easy read options? I'm not sure if this is specifically for the JPP website question. We are working with our web development team for accessibility options. We have not completed the process of putting up alt text for every single image and every single project, because some came on before that option was available to us. But increasing the accessibility of the web page is something we are absolutely interested in and our web developers are thinking about. So if people have feedback on that, you can absolutely reach out to us.
Is there another one? Yes, immediately. Sorry, I think we can also stop sharing the screen so we can
Oh,
Yes,
no, then I have
could-
to look at myself.
Oh, don't worry.
Uh,
Just cover it with the chat box.
Let's see. In terms of sections like funding opportunities, events, eventually conferences, are you relying solely on external submissions, interactions directly with the site to keep those updated? Do you have a specific team or framework for managing this within the project itself? I mean, this is something that I think we are hoping will grow with time. We have a part-time person who is helping with some of the initial loading of events into the web page, but we do get lots of submissions. The events page, literally anyone can submit something. So we do have, for example, I know that JF Toronto is very good about loading their whole calendar into our events page. And every time I see it, I'm just like, oh, bless them. So this isn't something that we have any automation for, and this is part of how we are hoping that the community buy-in will help facilitate the comprehensiveness of that part of the webpage. For funding opportunities, this is more piecemeal, and I would say if something is missing, email us and let us know. We don't have necessarily a submission form for that, and it's still something we launched only, I want to say, a couple of months ago, perhaps, maybe a little bit further back. But this is something where input from the community matters a lot to make sure that we can make the website as comprehensive as possible, especially across languages.
Thank you. Any more questions from the room? Otherwise, I have a few more,
Sure.
but we're
Just making sure I'm not like keeping you past time.
not at all, not at all. We have normally 1 hour and 30 minutes, so we're quite
Excellent.
still early. So I was wondering, because one of the problems that we're facing in terms of accessibility is that many people who work quite a long time to acquire good skills in Japanese, reading and writing, then don't have access to sources in Korean, for example, or Chinese or Russia. There's a whole scholarship that usually we really don't have access to. Is there, I mean, is there anything in the works thinking about sort of these, not just bilingual, but sort of opening that up a little bit?
Yes, much to our web developers' chagrin. We are thinking, and especially on many of the proposals being put together by our various concept development teams, we are asking them to consider what might it look like to make this trilingual or quadrilingual or add things in the future. We don't have, currently, we're kind of starting where we're starting, and then we're planning on, expanding as we get there. But it has been a consideration for our content management system and thinking about how we set this up. This would obviously require finding the right people to go through our process of manual translation of all of our different content, our different text fields. One of the things that is particularly exciting for us right now is that it's not just the front end of the website that's bilingual, but that we have put the infrastructure in place so that the back end is bilingual as well, which means that, for example, if you are based in Japan and you are a native Japanese speaker, and you go to sign up for Japan Scholar Search, you don't have to interact with the English language backend to sign up at all. It's all in Japanese. And that way you won't feel necessarily, if some people might feel intimidated or they would much prefer to work in Japanese than in English, all of those fields for sign up and for submitting information are all available also in Japanese. So we would want to make sure that as we expand, we make those kinds of conscious decisions as well. So perhaps down the pipeline, and perhaps it's coming, but it will be, I think, a long process. And right now we're operating on the idea that Japanese is the language we probably all share as Japan specialists.
Right. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. If there are no further questions, I would like to thank you. I would also like to thank Luca Proietti, who's a PhD candidate here, who's helped organize and also helped raise the funds for this event. So thank you very much. Big round of applause. And do come back next week. So there's no 2-week break next week for an event that we are organizing together with SysJack called Matsuzawa Yutaka and Europe, Conceptual Art Exchange from a Library and Archives Perspective. And the talk will be given by Professor Hideki Kikawa. So do join us next week again. And thank you very much for coming. And good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for joining us online. Very nice
Like, I don't know where the
lineup.
camera is. Thank you.
Yes, we'll just wave at them.
Just vaguely into the.
It's good night from us.